to ask whether in the government's eyes, is this a policy U-turn? Because pre-2018, companies could collect NRICs fairly freely, like transportation companies and stuff like that. 2018, there was a push for more to mask NRICs, and now we're viewing NRICs as a name. So in the government's eyes, is this a policy U-turn? And also, just to describe the scale of this incident, how many NRICs were leaked as a result of the Bizfile update last week? And how can we assure the public that, of the safeguards and if there are any security concerns?
On the policy part, I think Minjo will address that, but can I just check with you, when you say there is a policy U-turn, a U-turn on which aspect? Because because you mentioned collection, if the question is there a U-turn on collection of information, I don't think there's any issue about collection. So what would be the U-turn or the apparent U-turn that you're referring to?
Because in 2018 we were told that we should be using masking our NRICs, but then now there is not much weight given to the security behind masking it, and so we should view NRICs as something more like a name. Okay,
so your question is there a change between earlier advisory on masking and then now on whether or not you should continue to have masking? And that, I think, would be taken by MDDI. On your second question of how many, that is something that we're checking in terms of the numbers of the NRICs in the database. But as I think CE indicated earlier, or no, I think Minjo indicated earlier, remember this is the ACRA database, or the ACRA Bizfile rather, and not the registry of births and deaths. So this is not the registry of all Singaporeans. This is the register of businesses and the people who transact with ACRA.
Yeah. I think first is to acknowledge the confusion and why it is understandable that people are confused. Perhaps it would help if I characterize it this way. The only thing that has changed is the government deciding not to use masked NRIC numbers. That is the only thing that has changed. The circular of July that Hui Min referred to was essentially to deal with this issue. And as I explained earlier, we should have made clear that not masking doesn't mean reveal everything. So that part, let me just say it out there. The confusion lies at two levels. One is this is the government's position that it has taken for itself. What is the position that the government has taken for the private sector? So this is one level of confusion. What is the position that you have taken for yourself versus what is the position that you have taken for the private sector? I think the position that we have taken for ourselves is quite clear. It is captured in the circular that Hui Min referred to. The position that we have taken for the private sector is that we will consult first. We have not taken a position on what it should be for the private sector. And the consultation is necessary before we land on a position that is appropriate for the private sector. So to make clear, this is one level of confusion. The government's own use of mask numbers versus the private sector use of mask numbers is not the same thing. We only decided what it should be for the government. We have not decided what it should be for the private sector. What it should be for the private sector is something that should be born out of the consultation process. So that's one level of confusion. The second level of confusion is that the position for the private sector with regards to the use of mask numbers, what is it today and what is it in 2018? What was it in 2018? And the answer to that question is that it is the same. Because we have not consulted the private sector on the appropriate position to take with regards to the use of mask numbers, the position for the private sector is the same today as it was in 2018 when the advisory guidelines were issued by the PDPC outlining all the steps that must be taken when organizations collect and use NRIC numbers and as well as NRIC cards. So the advisory guidelines that were issued by the PDPC in 2018, they remain valid today. They have not changed. We do plan to update it. What are we going to update it for? We will obviously have to update it and make clear the position on mask numbers. We also have to update it to help put a stop to the improper use of NRIC numbers for authentication and as passwords. That is what the update will have to cover. But we have not done the consultation, and therefore it would be inappropriate to update those guidelines right now. And we will only update the guidelines, make any changes that are needed to support the need for stopping the use, the misuse of NRIC numbers. We will only make those changes after we have consulted the industry, after we have conducted the public consultation, which actually will have to involve the public too, because before you publish the new guidelines, minimally you have to put it out for public consumption. Minimally you will have to put it on your website to say, this is the version from 2018, and this is a version that we are proposing to shift to. And when you put the two versions together to the public will also be invited and have a chance to give their inputs, in addition to the industry providing their inputs. So, to recap, there are two levels of confusion. One level of confusion is government's decision on its own use of mask numbers versus government's thinking on what the private sector should do with regards to mask numbers. One level of confusion for industry, not decided yet. Private sector, not decided yet. And how to decide? Okay, must do consultation. Therefore, second level of confusion, before you have decided, what is the position? Position is unchanged from 2018. And that's why we say, if as an organization you have been faithfully carrying out your responsibilities under the advisory guidelines that were issued in 2018, you don't need to do anything else. You only need to do something if, for some reason, you ended up using NRIC numbers, whether partial or full, as passwords or as authenticators. That is when you are being encouraged to quickly do something about it, because your use of the NRIC number as a password or as an authenticator is not a secure way of handling your customer interactions. And that is something that must come to a stop as soon as possible.